Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the football family. Not only on YouTube, but if you download the app, you can watch live, unique video content, and all the latest breaking news will be at your fingertips. I'm delighted to say, in the studio with me, Alison McConnell, Hugh McDonald, and back out of hibernation after a 9-week fine. Here's Gordon Parks with us.
A 9-week fine?
9
ban?
Yeah, well, a ban and a fine, Hugh. I never thought we'd see him again. He's back.
He's back.
You just keep me right, that's all.
If you're relying on me to keep you right.
Quite a few months
There's
back.
only two clubs in
I've been
Turkey that
hiding
you haven't
right
offended, so we're delighted that you're with us, Parsley, and lots to talk about. And what better topic to open up with than Celtic and Rangers?
Possibly could go wrong.
Top 5 fast food restaurants.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Thanks for that, Ali. Anyway, lots to talk about. We'll talk Old Firm. We'll talk report card for the 12 managers in the Scottish Premiership. We'll also look at the European draw for the 3 clubs remaining in Europe. And I think we had a gut feeling many moons ago on this show that would be the case once we got out of August. And we'll also look at some of the spending and some of the players that are still looking for clubs, amazingly, in football across the UK. So with that in mind, the fallout, as ever, it's always good to talk about the big derby when it comes along. And this Old Firm game, I think for many of us, Hugh, it just followed what we thought it would follow, Celtic winning comfortably.
Yep, and it was interesting because I was spoken to on the Friday night by a fellow journalist who was asking me about the pendulum swinging in this derby, and you say, well, the pendulum's actually stuck in this, and it's stuck at the Celtic end.
Yeah.
I mean, this is now, since 2012, we talk about Rangers winning one title. This isn't just like a wee blip. You look at Brendan Rodgers' record in these derby games, and I don't know, there's been a great fallout after about when people are talking about stats and little details in the match and all that. In my view, and I'll say it in one sentence, I don't think Celtic played to anywhere near their potential. I thought Celtic played well, and I thought they were very comfortable winners.
This is the Journal show where we examine a lot of the things that are in the press, stories, pick up on them, take it on, give our thoughts on it. So why are we getting to a situation, prior to, we're hearing Graham Souness talking about the gap isn't huge. You have, I think, I'm listening to people who either are not in touch with Scottish football or suddenly start waving flags just to appease fans. There is a worrying trend here in the power base in Scottish football, where I think it's a one-horse race, and I wonder what reaction will come from what I call the Rangers fans in the know, who can see what's happening.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, because you can talk about as many stats as you want, and the stat is who's picking up the trophies, who's got the money. It's very difficult, and I said this before. We've seen this for weeks, and on this show and elsewhere about the Rangers situation. They're miles behind money-wise. You can talk about, I think they're miles behind on the park as well, but you can, 4 shots, they had 4 shots, we had 17 shies, they had 6, you can go all the way with that. But the fact of the matter is, you just look at the balance book and you see what Celtic have got, and because of the new financial fair play regulations, which are quite complicated, but to sum it down is, Celtic have got more money to spend, Celtic can spend more money because of their turnover, etc. Even as soon as if somebody comes in and gives them 50 million, that can't happen. That's not allowed to happen. That's gone. Those days are gone. Even if somebody wanted to come in and give them 50 million, under financial fair play, they couldn't get that and they couldn't spend it because they would be fined for sustainability. So it's if you look at the way, if you're sitting and saying to us, how are Rangers going to get back level with Celtic? They could win at Ibrox and China, don't get me wrong. They can win games back and forth. But there's got to be a real serious look at, building foundations, bringing through players, being smarter in the transfer market, etc., etc., etc. And that takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that time, Ali, I think, prior to it, there was a lot of very good journalists, pundits, with an informed viewpoint, which is quite simply, if you have a chairman in John Bennett who comes out and says, short-termism, we can't keep going down that road. If you have a manager who's just been given an extension to his contract and said that they have to change the mindset and the clientele within the group, you cannot suddenly go from that balanced viewpoint to then looking at the aftermath of an Old Firm game and just suddenly switch the narrative to hysteria.
That's what we spoke about, though. We spoke about reality and theory, and what you saw on Sunday night was the tip of the iceberg of reality. So that's your first reactive display outside Ibrox after losing that game. And it wasn't so much, I think, maybe losing the game, but also the manner of it. I think if Celtic had won 5-0 in that game, it wouldn't have flattered them. They were entirely comfortable out with the first 10 minutes, as we've spoken about, and Rangers created 2 chances, both of which I think would have been offside, but there was very, very little else on offer for the rest of that game. So what supporters are irked about is not just the defeat, but the insipid nature of the defeat. So you're asking for patience and you're asking to say, can we have this rebuild and can you stay with us? There's nothing there that you're seeing. For that to take root, you have to see something that's different. You have to be able to hang your hat on a level of trust that it's going to get better. That's on the park. Off it, again, you think repeated mistakes made, particularly with a player trading model. Now, Celtic closed the window on Friday having spent, I think, £34 million. If you go back and you add up what they've made this summer in outgoings, you'll find it's been a very judicious window in that they've offset what they've spent with what they've sold, which is what they tend to always do, which is why you have this very solid financial footing, which Rangers have not been able to do. I think when you look back at things like Ryan Kent, Alfredo Morelos, opportunities to sell players, reinvest it into the team, there was a wrong decision made at that point to sit on it. And what you've got now is a very complex financial time where you don't have the resources to go out and say, I'm going to bring in players to bolster the team, because what you're trying to do is where Celtic were in 2003, 2004, where you're saying, here's the wage bill, it's too high, you need to bring it down, but at the same time you have to bring it down while not compromising on the quality on the pitch, and that's a very, very difficult thing to do.
The other big problem here, Gordon, is quite simply that, for journalists of a certain age, or even pundits of a certain age who can't go back decades, which fortunately, we've been over the course of many a Celtic and Rangers game and many an SPFL, call it Scottish Premier League, whatever. We've been over the course where one side has dominated. And this situation that we witnessed at the weekend is quite simply what I witnessed when Rangers were winning 9 in a row. When Rangers were winning 9 in a row, there were times when Celtic were playing them off the park, but Rangers still won the game. And it's that classic Kenny Dalglish line. There's no point in talking about, we one that hit the bar, one that hit the post, and we dominated the first 10 minutes. The scoreline is the only thing you'll see in the history books.
I always equate, you talk about the great Rangers teams of the past, right? And Celtic, even though they had good players, how many of them get in the Rangers team? It's a great kind of gauge to see where a club is at. And there's nobody gets in the Celtic team from the current Rangers team. Just the quality is so far apart. And again, it's about the recruitment. Whereas they're giving contracts out to guys like Ross McCauley and Leon King, long-term deals are on good money. They're squandering money left, right and centre. There's no real strategy there. And again, we talk about project again. It's a dreaded word. How many projects can Rangers have over the last 6 years? The mismanagement at Rangers is galling. This is a manager that has to prove himself now. He has to stop making outrageous comments and back it up with substance. He has to go and recruit players that can play and can match up, at least make a fist of it.
Let me offer you this, and I'm playing devil's advocate here. And obviously, we're digesting the game in greater detail. He's brought in players that have got to come in and have got to make a contribution. It's game 4 of a season. And I would suggest to everyone to detach themselves from the hysteria of one game and say, well, he's got players that he's brought in that have got to come in. He's got players that have coming back from injury. I think this season is where they've got to actually look and say, right, we're going to judge you because it's your team now.
I had a look at the Rangers squad today, and I looked and I tried to be objectively assessing. I don't rate to a level. Apart from the goalkeeper, I don't rate any of them. Young boy Connor Barnes came in and made a contribution, and he's a work in progress. But he's the one that's been asked to go and drop deep and run the game for them. They're miles away. And I get back to individuals, the recruitment that the players have brought in. Of course, it's early, and some have to be given time to be judged. But I don't rate any of them.
Well, I would contest on the basis that you might not rate any of them
to a level I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, but I've still got to see the players. I mean, you can't. I don't think, from my point of view, I disagree with Gordon on the point that I think we've got to look and say this manager's got to be given time on the players that he's brought in to let them show what they can do. And another thing about it, apart from the debacle of Michael Beale last year, he came in and steadied the ship with a group of players that were not his. He steadied the ship, and now he's got his own players. So he's building his own team. So I think he deserves the right to build that team. Let's see where the players fit in that he's brought in, and let's see the shape and the style of this team, because I don't see that. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything in the early stages that suggests there's a pattern. But you've got to cut on some slack. We're 4 games into the season.
Yeah, that's you saying that, and that's maybe me saying that, but that all goes back to the theory. It's all right sitting, I mean, you can see in the boardroom sitting, listen, we have hosed away money here down here. This is a club that doesn't make up, I know they put out this pre-tax profit thing at one point. This is a club that loses money historically every season. This is what they do. They lose bundles of money. So they sit down in the boardroom and say, well, can't they go on this way? I mean, I'm putting my hand in. I mean, all these guys are getting slaughtered for how they're not true Rangers men and they're this and that and that. Putting their hand in the pocket for millions. All the time. And they're saying, well, we can't go on this. So here's the plan. The plan is we reduce the wage bill, we bring in younger project players, we blah de blah de blah de blah de blah, and all these guys who are all big businessmen, have all made fortunes in business. That's a great strategy. Isn't that a tremendous strategy? And it is. Except this is football. And you do not get time.
Especially in Glasgow.
You can wish you would. If you're maybe Dundee United or a Dundee, you can say, well, we can go to the Championship. I'm not saying Rangers will go to the Championship. We can rebuild. We can have a fallow season. We can have 2 fallow seasons. We can have 3 fallow seasons. And then 4 years on, in the 5-year plan, suddenly everything's rosy.
Do you think, I mean, he has got pedigree, and when he first came in, articulate and spoke a good game, but he's in sacked territory. If you look at what
I think he's in naive territory. I think what you're seeing is...
If Hugh's point is there's no time, he must be close to... Again, he's got a new contract, it's not going to happen. But we speak to Rangers fans. They are not convinced now, and he is now making no sense when he's trying to dissect reasonably.
I think maybe in a different environment, his comments would not be received the same way. But when you're in the environment of Glasgow, there are 2 teams, we all know, second is nothing, blah, blah, blah. I think maybe it would be advisable for maybe more senior figures around them to say there's a certain way that you've got to present this. You can't massage 4 shots on target, because we've all seen how the game played out, and you can't come out and say things like, hang on, we beat Ross County 6-0, our best result for 4 years, so can you qualify what happened on Sunday in respect of what happened last weekend? You need somebody maybe just with a wee bit of authority to advise and say, in a different environment, that all might have some traction, just not here.
The one thing that I would say in this whole situation, apart from being 5 points behind, which is unacceptable for Rangers fans after 4 games, the reality of this is quite simply that Philippe Clement has got a season to try and do something, maybe win a cup. they're not going to win the league. Even before the Old Firm game, nobody in their right mind suggested they were going to win the league. What they will do at this moment is be allowed, and he, I think, will be allowed, first of all, get back to Ibrox, because that was another debacle, right? So that's the first thing. Get back to Ibrox. Then he's got to look and say to himself, there's two things coming up which I think are going to, be under close scrutiny. One is you've got your new signings, get them in and let's see what way this team's going to play. But off the back of that, that team is going to have to manoeuvre Europe in the background as well. And people are paying good money they want to see what Rangers have been able to do. And I think Rangers have been flying the flag in European football. They've managed to come up with great results which have kept the coefficient high. So he's going to have to maintain that expectation. And then, of course, the other aspect of it is, you're looking and you're saying to yourself, apart from the players that are in there, he's got a conundrum with Yanis Hadji in the background, which still hasn't been resolved. Yanis Hadji, who is sitting in the background saying, I'm available to play. Now, we're all speculating, saying, well, if he plays one more game, he kicks into a new deal or he gets more wages. Sooner or later, that's going to have to be resolved.
The reason they can't get rid of Yanis Hadji is they pay him too much. It's a simple, there's no great mystery or enigma about it. He's on X amount a week. Teams that are in for him are going to say, at most, we'll give you half of X, or a third of X, or a quarter of X a week.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about, the rumours, so these have got to be couched with, is that he's on 25 plus. So no Rapid Bucharest coming in for a player is not going to pay 25G a week to him. So, and this is not just this isolated case. This is why the Rangers team, and this we do know for a fact because we see in their annual figures, their wage bill's higher than Celtic's, right? So you're saying to yourself, what? And you're saying to yourself, Todd Cantwell, how much? Connor Goldson, how much? Now fans will be saying, Tavernier, how much? Now, these situations are not just the politics of envy. Look at these players. It means that these guys are hard to get out the door.
Yeah. The other thing coming up, and I'm looking at it, they've got Dundee United away. They've got Dundee, then they've got Malmo, and then they've got Hibs, and then they've got Lyon at the start of October. So that's a run there where, the priority, I think, is to get back in at Ibrox for the Dundee game with the Copeland Road shut, and then hopefully get it open in time to get out into October with a full stadium again. So they've got a tough month coming up, and he's got a tough month to try and steady the ship. Just on the flip side of that, the game itself, I mean, taking Rangers, and we've dissected Rangers ad nauseum. We all know that he's got a new. I don't think he's in any zone of being under pressure for the bullet at all. Even with that 5-point gap, they're going to have to do something in the next month, Alison, to restore confidence. Because this game, for me, the fallout from it has been, absolutely crazy. Not orchestrated by anybody within the media, all orchestrated by the Rangers fans looking and saying, we're not happy with that. We're certainly not happy 4 games into it to lose to Celtic in such a manner again. This is Rangers fans asking the questions, and this is us dissecting what the manager, what the players have said, what the overview is and the narrative coming out of it. He has to steady the ship for this month.
I think it's not, steadying the ship's one thing. The only way you do that is by winning and winning consistently. But a big frustration, I think, for Rangers fans will be the goals conceded against Celtic are the goals that you have seen time and time again across recent seasons. So what you're seeing is a backline incapable of absorbing the lessons of Daisen Maeda is very fast. You need eyes on the back of your head. You need to be watching him all the time. I think the repetition of the same goal, the concessions of the same goals are very, very difficult to stomach. But what you say in terms of building credibility and trying to find some stability only comes through winning games. And when you're 5 points behind at this point in the season, you've drawn out your opening game, you've lost a game, there is pressure and every slip is magnified. One more, you draw in the next game against a Jim Goodwin team who have had a tremendous start to the season, who are confident, who will feel as though they've got nothing to lose, who want to go and have a go. You drop points there, and all of a sudden you are at crisis point. That is just the nature of the beast in Glasgow.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's not stray into what I call Hugh Keevan's territory, which is, by the way, if they lose that one and this one and that one, you know what I mean?
But Peter, you're saying here's what they've got next. That's the inevitability if you don't come out and win it, and you have to win it well.
But I don't see it. I accept what Gordon's saying, that there is a point now where everybody, and I'm talking Rangers fans, who are the most important on this, because their groundswell of opinion will make or break them. But the point here is, I think the board at Rangers are looking and saying, it's a hard one to take. The manner of it is even more difficult to take. But you cannot make that statement at the start of the season and then start changing managers. I think they'll stay with him. I think they'll give him the chance to. I think they'll give him the chance to build his own team, which I think is fair. But the one thing that I think has been missing, Hugh, in all of this discussion is when John Bennett made that statement, I don't think any of us thought Rangers were going to win the league. And I think John Bennett has said we are going to have to take the pain without saying to everybody, we're not going to win the league. We're going to have to take the pain of this year to stick to this blueprint and go on with it.
And they're going to have to. There's a lot. That's a great statement, and I think it's actually the only way forward. But, and it's this word, it's tweet to reality bites.
Well, what is the pain? What is a level of pain that you think you can take? Is it losing the league by 20 points? Is it losing the league by 5 points? What is it? How do you quantify what the pain is? You can lose a league. You can lose a league by 5 points. You can lose a league the way you can lose a game in a certain manner. But if it becomes such a chasm, if you end up going into double figures,
Jim Goodwin will think that they've got nothing to lose.
Absolutely.
Jim Goodwin's not thinking that. Jim Goodwin thinks that he's got a team capable of going. And by the way, he's not alone. The level of pain is that Celtic, playing against any team in the country, are waiting to get hammered. The reality for Rangers is every club in the Premier League believes they've got a chance against them, and more than.
Yeah, well, the other thing about it, which I think, and we were talking about breaking point, I think they're going to stick with him. I think we will constantly be analysing what he says, but the one line that he delivered after the game, which I think is something that the Rangers fans are hanging their hat on. Yes, he's got a difficult month. Yes, he's got games in Europe that he's got to manoeuvre. And yes, he's got to get this team in some shape that we start to understand what the DNA is of Philippe Clement's team. But the one thing that he did say was, we'll have Celtic at Ibrox in January, and then we'll see. Because at that point, he'll have all that time to get a side together. He'll have Ibrox full of 50,000. It will be his team, Hugh, against Celtic. There may well be a gap that means that it's not as significant, but the Rangers fans will be saying, Rangers, 2nd of January, Ibrox, do them.
Yep.
And that is it in a nutshell. That's all the Rangers fans will be thinking about. And his words will be played back to him. We'll see in January was what he said. Yeah. Because he'd highlighted all the stats that you can talk about. He highlighted the domination in the first 10 minutes. He highlighted taking chances. He highlighted all those stats. Some of the pundits, former Rangers players and managers have highlighted it. January 2nd, beat Celtic, shows that the plan is moving forward.
Yeah, and you can, right, fine, that's, and people who are sort of mired in this, which we are professionally, and our people are emotionally mired in it. That's great. Rangers beat Celtic 1-0 at Ibrox. Bring out the bunting, everything's fine and rosy. And we know it just isn't.
Do you not think that's every mistake in the book he's making, all right? We'll see you in January. I mean, come on, it's like things not to say.
Yeah, well, I always remember Thierry Henry saying it at Hampden, we'll see you in Paris. And you look down the lens and I was scared, but it didn't work out that way.
The thing about it is to go back to, it will not, any Rangers result in January probably, almost certainly, will not change anything in the narrative of who's going to win the league. It will not change anything in the narrative of who's got the money and who can strengthen. I mean, if you're looking at it now, you're saying to yourself, see when you talk about Rangers players getting into the Celtic team, Have a look at the Celtic bench. So Celtic brought a £9 million striker and an £11 million midfielder on, left a Barcelona left back sitting there, left a £6 million centre half sitting there. Come on, I mean, this isn't like, we're not, this doesn't take much look at. Football now, Peter, is an absolute game of money. It's not the way the old way it is, and it's a game of money all over. It's like, people say, it comes in cycles. No, the Tour de France comes in cycles. Football doesn't it?
Yeah.
Football comes in money. And I'll tell you why. See, if it came in cycles, Nottingham Forest would be going for the Premier League with Leeds at the moment. I mean, come on.
Okay, you all make a case, and I think it's vital that we try and offer some sort of balance or some sort of cutting someone some slack, only based on what he said. And the fallout from this, we've dissected certainly the Rangers predicament. If you dissect the Celtic predicament, they're 5 points clear. They're playing football the way Brendan Rodgers probably wanted to happen in quarter 2 of last season, but it took a while for them to respond to him. They're now playing free-flowing football, and the flip side of this whole crazy game of football that we love is they're 5 points clear domestically. Now everybody's starting to go, okay, we're now going to switch our attention and see what these signings are going to do in a group, and forgive me for this as we look towards the European draw, but in a group where I've spoken to a number of Celtic fans who are looking, thinking, they should be doing something here. Is that too high an expectation when you look Slovan Bratislava, Borussia Dortmund, Leipzig, Atalanta, Dynamo Zagreb, Club Brugge, Young Boys and Aston Villa?
You've got the Champions League finalists from last season, you've got the Europa League finalists, a couple of Conference League semi-finalists in there. I think it's a group that's exciting. I think Celtic fans will be delighted to be part
Are the ones
of a
I've been
new
speaking to wrong?
format. I think when you weigh up where Celtic are and where teams have been, it's a long time since Celtic have been in a Champions League, never been in a Champions League final. But where these teams have been, I don't think you can be dismissive of what they've achieved in recent seasons. I think it's plausible for Celtic to have a strong return from it. I think it's a group that could have been a lot worse. I think when you look at Rangers' Europa League team, it's fairly daunting. I think the challenge could have been substantial, but I still think there's teams in there that are capable of are giving Celtic a hiding, for want of a better word. Especially when you think of Celtic going to Dortmund. You know, it's a fantastic team, a fairly formidable challenge. That's not to say I think Celtic potentially could be looking at ambitions to go into the knockout stages. However, I still think it would be fairly difficult.
Gordon?
I think Brendan Rodgers, the domestic dominance is now so taken for granted now that when you hold someone's feet to the flame, Brendan Rodgers is always about Europe. And I think this has to be because the contentment now that Celtic fans have with domestically winning routinely, taking it for granted, the appetite now has to be continental. They have to go at that level and make more than a fist of it. I mean, you talk about stats. Statistically, Celtic in Europe, far from, miles short. Have they got a better side they can go and match up against some really good European sides? Maybe still not there yet.
Hugh?
I think the top end of the group, which has got Leipzig and Dortmund and Atalanta in it, are a level above Celtic. I think you only have to look at, I know Rangers did so well against Leipzig, a couple of years ago. So there's hope. There's hope when you're playing these teams. Did so well against Dortmund as well. But Dortmund again, as Alison says, Champions League finalists. Atalanta win the Europa League. They're tough, but and I think this is the big one. There's teams in that we always say Celtic can't punch above their weight because of the amount of money in other leagues. There's teams that Celtic should be beaten in that, and really should be beaten, Peter.
Yeah.
Because of what league they're existing with budgets they're on. So I think I would really put if I was setting down my objectives, I would say yes, get to the playoffs should be a solid objective this year.
I don't think Celtic have ever won their first Champions League game in a group.
No. And we've got Leipzig this time as the first one, isn't it?
What would it take for Celtic to change their narrative? Because it's been abysmal. I mean, you look at, you talk about, you can knock out stats left, right and centre about how bad they've been, but what does it take? Because if football is all about money now, as you say, Hugh, Celtic are well short of a lot of the teams, let's be honest, right?
You've got Slovan Bratislava.
So there's that.
And young boys, I think they're games that they should
I
certainly
think
be looking at.
Bratislava's the first one.
Yeah, at home. But my point on this is, and it's the flip of where we are analysing Rangers. This is now European, which for my mind, that's the reason why Brendan was brought back. You've got a second tilt. You're the best manager available. Sometimes the train's there and they can get him. So he's easily the best coach in this country. Now he's on the flip side of that. This is why you were brought back. So what will happen is the Celtic fans who have paid for the tickets will look and say, okay, now let's see if you can do something in Europe. Now let's see the signings you've made, if they are the ones that you're happy with, that you wanted, and can they do something in Europe?
Yet to be seen. That's the problem he's got. I mean, he knows himself that's the pressure cooker for him. Because it's not enough now. Dominate Scottish football, it's passé. He needs to go and bury his teeth in Europe and show how good a coach he is, because again, Celtic have more than washed their face with the transfers they've done. They've actually got a surplus of what they've done. And
Well, they've made 11 million.
right.
They've spent nothing.
So Celtic, the big argument is Celtic going to spend to get to the level where they need to be. Brendan clearly thinks they have done, and that's a big pressure.
Yeah. And do you see them being able to realistically?
Again, I don't.
You don't?
I don't. I just think, as Hugh says, these clubs operate at a different level consistently. Of course, Celtic have got a chance to take a scalp or two. I don't think they've got enough.
Yeah. Do you see them making Celtic Park a fortress?
I hope so, but I don't. I think these teams will love coming to Glasgow, love coming to Celtic Park. What a European night it is, everyone talks about it. It's a myth to think that these clubs panic and fear it.
Yeah, I would agree with
Embrace it.
that. It's
No,
nonsense. I think good players love that, no?
It's a solid start. The Champions League theme plays and then Celtic get pumped. That's the narrative, Hugh.
Not until last season. Last season they didn't. Last season at home, they got a draw and they got a victory, and they lost. And again, this is, you lose, but they lost late in the other game. So they were competitive. I think we can see they were competitive at home in the Champions League last season.
They had one win against Feyenoord.
Yeah, but at home, that's 30, they won. I thought you were talking about home.
Yeah, but they had a win against Feyenoord.
And
A draw
against
against
Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
And they get beat by Lazio in the last minute. This time they're not going to be playing, well, they might be playing 3 teams of that calibre, but they're also going to be playing teams not of that calibre.
Yeah.
See, I think drawing with Atletico Madrid, I thought, and I was there that night, I thought it was a really good performance. I thought the Lazio one was a decent performance, and Feyenoord could have gone either way, but it was a win.
Do you think he's got the players now that he has? And again, let's not be two-faced about this. If we're dissecting Philippe Clement and what he's saying, do you think he's been given the players that he was craving for when he stepped outside what I call the zone of follow the narrative from your PR guy? Do you think after 3 transfer windows, transfer window number 3, he's finally said, they've given me what I asked for?
He says he has. Said that yesterday morning. He said it was a very, very, very good transfer window for me. The board gave me everything I asked for. So he said it. I still don't think it's enough. And to me, I think I'm really interested in Engels because I've watched Engels. I think he's a terrific young talent. But I don't know if he's going to be the sort of... In fact, I'm sure he's not going to be the sort of game changer. He's only 20.
What is he good at?
He's Calmac. He's not a Matt O'Reilly. He's a very good defensive minder, technically very good, mobile, will pick a pass, will retain possession. If you look at the other one, the Barcelona guy's a guy who can't get a game from Barcelona. No shame in that, but he's young. you're buying you're going to say, well, we're going to stiffen up the defence by buying a guy that didn't start the season for Sheffield United. Ida and Bernardo are fine. We've talked about them. But if you're talking about real improvements, well, Brendan's delighted. Well, who are we to question? I don't think. I'm not sure it's enough to make a dent, and I'm sure it wouldn't be enough to make a dent in a traditional Champions League. I think it might be in this one, because you've got to remember in this Champions League, only 8 teams go out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say to you on this basis, if I was being, looking at it with a fine-tooth comb, they're short of a striker.
They are. And in Europe, again, at the highest level, you need special players. Helga's a finisher. But the mercurial, talismanic, kind of gifted individual doesn't exist at Celtic Park at the moment. They're very functional and very good at it. And their intensity that they play with is the difference. That's why they've hit the gear that you're talking about that we're searching for.
Yeah.
Special players, they've all got them. Celtic just don't have that kind of real special guy that's going to create something for you and pull out a hole and get the game-changing moments. Lazio game, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, these moments in games.
These guys are going to...
Celtic fall short because they don't have that top drawer player. And Brendan can say what he wants, but he knows that as well.
No, I would agree with that as well. I felt as though they could have done with a different type of midfielder. I wasn't sure if they needed another striker. I think it can be really hard to keep 3 strikers happy when you're only playing with 1 regularly. I think that's a conundrum for a lot of teams in the way that you play. I think they've paid over the odds for Adam Ida. I'm not sure that Adam Ida is a £9.5 million player. But the proof will be in the pudding. We'll see over the next... The thing with Celtic is, if they need it, they can go and strengthen in January in a domestic sense, which I don't think anyone anticipates that they'll have to. It's whether or not this is enough.
They might find somebody in January who's cheesed off the club that
and you're bedding in for next year.
Hasn't played a lot of Champions League football.
Talking of cheese, shoe, it needs to be a different menu for Celtic fans now. They've had the bread and butter. They've gorged on it. They need something more. A bit of fine dining. Have they got enough to do that? Doubt it.
I agree with you. On the basis that you and I have talked about a special player. I've been shot down in a couple of other shows on the fact that there's no such a thing as a number 10 anymore, which I'm willing to hold my hands up and say, okay, if there's no number 10 playing, for clubs anymore, fine. But they don't have somebody who can break down and do that special thing, and they certainly don't have another striker that, is going to give them an option other than Ida and Kyogo, who's at his best if he's running past a high line or he's in 6 yard and somebody's cut the ball right across that 6 yard area. How often Celtic are going to be able to do that in Europe, we're about to find out. On the flip side of that, just briefly, a couple of things before I get the report card on the managers. Malmo, Lyon, Steaua Bucharest, Olympiacos, Nice, Tottenham, Man United and Union Saint-Gilloise. That's Rangers for you. How do you think that group's going to fare for them in Europe?
I think it's very difficult. I think it's a really tough group. I think realistically, you're looking at it and you're thinking you just cannot... I'd struggle to see where Rangers are going in it. I think Spurs, Man United, Nice, Lyon, tough group.
I think so as well, and I think the big problem with Rangers, and it's going to be a huge one, is what they call now the workload on the players, in rotations, etc. Because if you look at that Rangers side on Sunday and say that's the best team they could have on the park, we know there's a couple of people coming back from injury. But if you say that generally, that's a bit, and then you've got to rotate that.
And you've also got more games.
Excellent. You've got to rotate it Thursday to Sunday. You can't just with Thursday, Sunday, Thursday. I mean, I think it's going to be hugely difficult for them.
And it brings me nicely to a team that leaves me totally and utterly exasperated in Hearts, because they're in the Conference League. They should have been in the Europa League. So I think that's the first open criticism that I think Stephen Naismith has to take on the chin. They should have been in the Europa League. That would have brought great financial reward for them. Now they've got Dynamo Minsk. Now they've got Omonia Nicosia, Heidenheim, Cercle Bruges, Copenhagen, and Petrol
It's funny, I saw number 10, can't remember his name, but he was the kind of catalyst for that result that knocked Hearts out. It was a game that was there for the taking. Clearly they couldn't harness what should always be a magnificent night at Tynecastle. That's a wilting night for an opponent because it's tighter. How much pain are Rangers going to take? How much pain can Hearts fans take? Because again, this guy's just been given a new contract. I like him. I think he's still learning a lot. I think he's making mistakes. I think he's chopping and changing. I think he's recruited really well. It mystifies me. I think it's a happy
We all
club.
thought he'd recruited well, Parsley, and they've just failed miserably.
Yeah, I travelled. I think the last couple of years I've travelled to every game, home and away with Hearts, and I keep hearing about learnings. The penny is not dropping. I don't know why, because Stephen's really switched on. He's really eager to learn. He's always been that kind of guy. But they look as if when it comes to the event, they're not up for it. I don't understand it.
Yeah. How do you see that group?
I'd say that group is decent. I mean, but you've got to look at the pedigree of the teams in that group and their home leagues, and the pedigree of those teams are really good. You just don't look at, teams that say, oh, they're from Cyprus, so X, Y, and Z. So it's tough. Again, I think, and I think Hearts board and Stephen had looked at this. People are talking about Hearts playing squad being pretty bloated at the moment. But I think at the beginning of the season, they would have said, right, we're going to be in Europe, we can see a way forward. So we're going to be playing an awful lot of games. So let's bulk up in terms of, not just in terms of quality, but in terms of number as well. I think what has probably dismayed them is the start to the domestic season. I think they would have looked of, say, well, we're going to be, top six, vying for what I call the non-Rangers and Celtic title. We'll be aiming for third again. We'll be aiming for cup runs, and we're going to have a European run, because that's what's happening. They've got a European run, whether you like it or not. So I think they need to put a few markers down in domestically, and their next game is domestically
Celtic.
Yeah. One of the things I will say, and I am there to be proven wrong, I also am a big fan of Stephen Naismith, but I think if we're analysing and saying Celtic, there's an expectation that they might be able to do something. If we're saying it's a tough group for Rangers and all the things that we've been discussing about him, trying to get a definitive 11, trying to steady the ship, trying to do something when you've got Man United and Tottenham in your group, then I'm looking at Hearts, and on the evidence of what I've witnessed in the games and watched them regularly, I can see them finishing bottom or second bottom in that group. I do not see anything other than misery in Europe for Hearts.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly tough ask for them, but also I think clubs always struggle to cope with the demands, like particularly when you go down the league a bit, like when you come struggling to cope with just the pressure of playing Thursday to Sunday. I think you always see an impact, even across Europe.
The old metric, when the way it used to work in Europe, if we're going back to then, all our teams are out apart from Celtic at this stage. It's only the fact that they can fall in the groups cushion their landing now for failure.
Yeah.
That 15 years ago eliminates all our clubs apart from Celtic, so they're lucky. And it just shows you how badly we've actually done. It camouflages the fact that Hearts are still in Europe.
Yeah.
That Rangers are still in Europe.
Oh, there's no absolute doubt in my mind. We spoke about it on this programme and on other programmes as well. I said at the start of the season, we will be in a situation where there'll be 3 clubs left at a push. We might get 3, one of them by default, and that's the way it's actually transpired. And the how bad Scottish football is not, some journalists just being their usual scathing selves. You look back over the last 20 years, abysmal because we've allowed the football to drop so badly that we're in a situation where every club out with Celtic and Rangers, and thankfully Rangers who've been flying the flag, but out with that, the performances in European football has been absolutely woeful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think what you've seen is the bar being raised significantly across Europe at a time when Scottish football was toiling. I think if you look at the standard within the league, season on season, you can see it diminish. I think you go back 20 odd years or so, when you had Celtic, Rangers and Aberdeen, Celtic Rangers both in the group stages of the Champions League and Aberdeen in the group stages of the old UEFA Cup format. I think that almost seems now to a new generation, it's almost like going back and talking about what happened in the 80s. It's so unimaginable. Now I think you have seen finances affect the quality of players that teams are able to attract and bring in, which then of course has a knock-on effect to the standard within the league.
No, you're absolutely spot on. It's so depressing to hear that it's what you can bring in. What can you actually bring through?
But bring through as well. I mean, I read the SFA report. I thought it was a terrific report, by the way. I actually went home and read it all, and I still think, and I know they come up with facts and figures, but bringing through is another one which is a terrific strategy, but kind of disappears when it meets reality, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about Celtic and Rangers, though I think in that case it's stark. But I was really interested in as I always am, listening to Stephen Robinson sitting in this couch, who's been in many ways the most successful manager in Scotland over the last. If you take what he's got to punch with him and what he's achieved, one of the most successful managers in Scotland, and he was just saying no. Basically, that was it subbed down. I'm not bringing them through. If I lose 3 games, I'm out. I can't do this. I can't. And
the league lends itself to that.
And then exactly. And then the other thing as well is you're looking at Celtic and Rangers on the telly the other day, and Stilly and Petrov sitting there talking about, you know, Celtic and Europe and all that, and you're looking at Petrov and you say, yeah, you played in a midfield which had a Champions League winner alongside you, right? You were there. Out wide was Alan Thompson. He only got, I think, 1 English cap, but he was an English internationalist. And up front, you could choose 2 or 3 from Henrik Larsson, Chris Sutton, and John Hartson. You had Sweden's best centre half behind you. You had Belgium's centre half. You had Jackie McNamara. You go, wait a wee minute.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point you make, Hugh. But with that in mind, you know, it brings me nicely to the situation. And by the way, I might as well do a little plug here on the basis that Alison, you were in discussion with Lee Miller. It's
which is terrific clip. I saw. I'm late to watch the lot of it, but what a good clip!
Don't milk her ego right now. Let's just wait and see the whole programme. Eh?
Did you get a trim?
No, she tried that, but he wasn't for doing any of that.
I can see that.
But
Lovely.
I was actually going to plug you, so I don't know why I should bother now. But we've got a brilliant feature that we started last season, and she's a little bit reluctant because we tagged it McConnell Meets, which
we didn't tag it that. We didn't.
It was a slight technicality on the fact that her name is McConnell, and she meets people. So there you are. She sat down with Lee Miller, who's the dad, of course, of Lennon Miller. You know, it almost dismisses what he achieved as a footballer himself. But Lennon Miller, great to get a little insight from Ali chatting to him. You can get it on our YouTube channel.
Tell you a great Lee Miller story quickly.
Yeah, fire away.
An agent friend of mine, you know him, took him down to Bristol City. And he went in, and Lee went into the stadium, and the directors were there, and they dealt with the chief exec and all that, and Lee sat there and listened to everything that was happening. And the agent tells the story that after it was finished, they shook hands and they walked down the stairs towards the car park, and Lee asked the agent, so how much am I getting? And the agent went, Lee, you just sat for an hour and a half discussing exactly what you're getting. Hadn't taken any of it in.
Yeah.
Typical football player. Great guy, but classic football player. How much am I getting?
Yeah, after tax. So
I think he'll be more on the ball when it comes to dealing with Sunderland.
Well, I'll tell you what's a great insight into it. You know, and I hope he goes on to have a great career. But this is this pivotal moment we're talking about with young Scottish players. Alison's got a great interview with his dad, who's a level-headed boy, and has guided him along. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Lennon Miller. We've seen so many of them before, and we want to see, okay, are you going to get your 100 games? Are you going to become a better player? Is the hype going to be backed up with the reality that you can go on to greater things?
I think he's the most exciting young Scottish talent I've cast my eyes on in many a year. I think for the age he is, 17 years of age, his knowledge, his touch, his dexterity, his awareness, his vision, his athleticism, it's a no-brainer. Go and spend the money on him now. And I think he should have been taken, rather than taking somebody like Ryan Jack to the Euros, go and be ambitious and put somebody like that in and take him. what would he have learned? They brought him on, but I think he's the most exciting talent.
Okay, high praise indeed. It's on our YouTube channel, McConnell Meets Lee Miller. Well worth it. Lots of great content on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel, and I guarantee you that if you compare all the big guns who've got millions to spend and the content that we're driving out from Scottish football and beyond, I think we are giving you 7 days a week, not only reporters out at games, but lots of different things that you can watch from the Journos, the women's football show, and of course I'll be back with our one-to-one series, Straight Talk, as well, just to keep Ali on her toes. So, lots of content for you to address. Just before we go, guys, I thought we'd look at the report card. There are 12 teams in the league currently. Brendan Rodgers, an assessment of his season so far, Hugh. It's early days, 4 games, but nevertheless, we've got a break.
Well, if you take on recruitment, he's happy. He certainly had his hand on the tiller with recruitment. He's got what he wants. There are no players anyway they come through, so have been foisted or whatever on him. So he's happy with that. I think they're much better than they were last season. I think they're quicker, more cohesive than they were last season, and that takes time to bring in. And they've strengthened in certain areas. I think the funniest thing about it as well is when you saw Sunday's match, that 3 players I think were a standout on Sunday, all were looking at the bench. Bernardo would be looking at a certain Belgian guy sitting on the bench. Greg Taylor was looking at a Barcelona guy, and Liam Scales is probably looking at an American that's come up from Sheffield. So they look good. So Brendan would be, I think, almost a 10 out of 10. I don't see any marks off him.
Okay, my favourite moment of the weekend was up at Dingwall. Aberdeen scored a 98th minute winner. They invade the park as if they've won the European Cup Winners' Cup. They're going tonto. The average age of the Aberdeen fan is, 16, 17? But they still are on this fantastic run. What's your assessment of Jimmy Tilleen?
Breath of fresh air.
No.
Recruited really well. I know it's early to see it, but folk coming in and making an impact quickly, taking responsibility. To lose your crown jewel, and you think that's a platform that's kind of broken a wee bit. Not to notice Miloski's absence is quite a thing, and I think again he's saying the right things.
Kevin Nisbet's a really good signing for them.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's been sleeping. Somebody's been sleeping. Hearts probably were, but I have to say that he'll bring the guarantee of goals. The big Dane they've brought, Norwegian boy. Who's the Scandinavian with the blonde hair? Yes.
Yep.
Looks
Nielsen,
as if
the 32-year-old.
Right. They are making a positive contribution, and they've got an unknown quantity now. Aberdeen have got a good system, but they've got something about them now that's an energy that's been lacking for so long.
Yeah, October will be the month we're going to assess. October's Journos.
Hunt for Red October.
Exactly what we're going to do. We're going to analyse Aberdeen after October is finished, because then we'll see exactly whether the Dons should be getting excited or not. Dundee United, Jim Goodwin. We've only got to look at where they are in the table. And look, they've got Rangers coming up next. But what's your overall assessment of a guy that at the start of the season, some people were going, the Dundee United fans wanted him billeted?
Yeah, it's been an excellent start. I think they've only conceded 1 goal. Fantastic start in the last 8 too, in the Premier Sports Cup. I think these opening weeks can be so important for a team like Aberdeen, like Dundee United, and just setting a tone for your season. Just a bit of confidence, a wee bit of cohesion within the squad, finding your feet. Like Dundee last season coming up, and everyone's thinking, what have you got? Are you capable of bridging the gap? Yeah, I think he's been excellent start. I don't think you could have asked for much more.
And what would your message be on Philippe Clement? Rangers just behind Dundee United, 5 points behind Aberdeen and Celtic.
I mean, the message, if you're just breathing deeply, as certain pundits says we should, is it's going to take time, and I think that is a very sensible and correct message. I just think that it'll fall on deaf ears. All my experience in football, not in knowledge, but just all the years I've been through watching it, tells me that you just don't get it. Everybody can say you get time, and I think it's just a hugely difficult situation. I agree with Peter that they'll want to stick with him, not least because they'll have to pay him off as well, which is a thing. But I just think it's an unfolding story, shall we say?
Yeah, Stuart Kettlewell, Motherwell. He just keeps tweaking that side. Had a bad run last season. Some people were thinking his tea's out. He didn't.
Great to rehab. I mean, Stuart Kettlewell's a student of the game, ambitious. Ross County get thrown into the deep end. To rehabilitate himself the way that he's done, getting in and done a job for them and getting, a new contract there. It deserved it. Motherwell, another great result at the weekend. Mm-hmm. I just like him. Again, he's a guy that talks about bringing kids through.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of kids away in loan, and he emphasises the point, it's not a punishment. Everything that he says to me, Stuart, impresses me. I'm so delighted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll offer my tuppence worth in Tony Docherty. I mean, absolutely magnificent. I mean, they are a joy to watch. They've lost Luke McCowan. I'm curious to see how they deal with that going forward, but he just keeps coming up with gems. He's got a structure. They're well organised. He speaks well. He's not one of those people who comes out with any kind of foolish statements, certainly not getting caught up in the old, let's make sure we're above Dundee United. He's got, I think, bigger fish to fry. I look at Tony Docherty and I see what he's doing at Dundee. I look at the club and the debacle that you've witnessed with boards before. I just get this feeling, a solid structure and a plan for a training complex.
Very ambitious training
An
complex.
unbelievable video that suddenly displays what they want as a future in a Dundee stadium at Camperdown. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, if they can pull half of this off, they'll be in a good place. But what a good manager. The Dundee fans love him. Stephen Robinson.
Yeah, I think a tough start. I think we've spoken about the demands that competing in European football can have in a squad, especially when A, you're not used to it, and B, you don't really have the resources there to go. I think he'll be disappointed with the start, but I think you would back them to find their feet again. I would suspect that they'll be pushing for top six again.
And my favourite manager in a post-match press conference anywhere across the country, Craig Levein-Parsi.
Surprised he's still in the job, actually. I thought the new ownership would change it, but I'm delighted that he stayed because Scottish football needs that experience. You get put out to pasture too early. Again, a rehabilitation of sorts there. I think he's definitely better than last year. I think he's recruited well again. Middle of the road.
Yeah. Are you okay? That's the most positive thing you've ever said on the Journalists.
Try to be positive because we've filled it today, have we not?
It's been unbelievable. I thought there was something wrong with you there. David Gray.
Interesting one, isn't it? David Gray, he really, unlucky at the weekend, you could say he desperately needs just a victory, however it comes. Doesn't have to go and look at stats and say, and just one that comes undeserved, whatever. He really needs points because what we do know about Hibernian is that we're talking about Rangers impatience. Hibernian impatience are not usually in the same setting. So I would say he's in a difficult position at the moment.
Yeah, I'm going to take Don Cowie on the basis that I know I'm coming to you for Stephen Naismith, but Don Cowie, if he's one of our owns up at Ross County are my tip for relegation. And again, there've been many a person's pundits tip for relegation, but I don't see where it's coming from this season to escape.
Yeah, I would agree. Bussy, I think they were my tip as well for relegation too.
We're under time. Stevie Naismith.
Yeah, I think you'd fear for Stephen. I think it's been a very difficult start, and going to Celtic Park straight after the international break could be, if Celtic are in the same kind of form that they were in last weekend, it could be a tough afternoon for them. And you do wonder if there's a substantial defeat, if there's an emphatic defeat, could it be the straw that breaks the camel's back?
See when the fans are no longer having you. They're no longer having you.
Yeah. Last point. Amazingly, they're bottom of the table. Kilmarnock, Derek McInnes.
Never going to say a bad word against Derek. Let's end it on a high. No, Derek McInnes has done magnificently there. He inherited a team and a squad that he's put his own mark on. They've got looking through a slicky spell and a few bumps, but there's a guy that's perfectly placed to go and lift them up.
Okay. Gordon Parks, positive note. Who'd have thought? Thanks to Gordon, thanks to Hugh McDonald and Alison McConnell. Don't forget, Alison is in conversation in her favourite programme, McConnell Meets, with Lee Miller on our YouTube channel. Well worth having a look over and listening to what Lee has to say. Great interview from Alison there. Lots more to come on this channel. Hope you've enjoyed the Journos. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Download the app if you can. Thank you for all your support and for the programme today. Thank you for listening and watching.